Welcome to episode 570 of the show. Today is going to be an out and about episode, so that explains where all the noise is coming from. Anyway, so now that we're done with that, let's head straight to business. In the previous episode, I can't remember what we looked at, but I remember that we're still on looking at new methods of lead generation or new school methods of creating customers. So every time you hear lead generation, either on this podcast or any other podcast or some other business material that you're looking at, just take it that lead generation is just a technical way of saying that you're trying to look for customers, you're trying to create customers. So today we're going to be looking at online advertising and boosting posts and how that can help you find customers. So remember, I'm going to be using the terms finding customers, creating customers, or lead generation. I'm going to be using them interchangeably. Now, what is advertising? Okay, so remember that on this podcast I'm using working definitions, not technically correct definitions. So for the purpose of this podcast, advertising is just paying people, that's another party, you're paying them for access to attention or access to an audience that they have already acquired. So traditionally, TV stations, let's say NTA, that's back in the 1980s, for instance, when we only had the national TV stations available. Okay, I think for Lagos State in the 80s and 90s, they had the state broadcasting corporations. So there were, I think Lagos State had two channels, but in Abuja in the 80s, there was just one channel. There was just NTA, and that was it. So back in the day, if you wanted access to an audience that NTA has already cultivated, let's say you had a sports shop in Garki in the central part of Abuja, and you wanted to advertise because NTA used to have a sporting show that they would run after the children's belt. The children's belt used to be 4 p.m. to 5 or maybe 6 p.m. Back in the day. And after that, they would run straight to sports. And for my siblings and I, that was a cue to get out of the house. Because, of course, we would like to be there to watch Voltron and Super Ted and all that cool stuff. But then after that, they would start playing NTA sports, and then we'd just leave the house for the adults, to watch all that boring sports stuff. So, if you had a shop in Garki and you wanted to send people to your shop to buy sporting equipment or whatever, that would be the prime time to advertise. Now, since NTA was the only TV station at the time and had built a loyal following around sports issues, it would have made sense at the time to advertise on NTA for people to come to your store, assuming you could afford it, because TV advertising has always been expensive. So now you have a whole lot more options with the advent of the internet and social media and all that. So there are much more places that you can advertise at. But essentially, this is what advertising is, because you're going to be paying the NTA, or you're going to be paying Facebook or Google or Instagram or Bella Niger or Naira Land or whoever it is. You're going to be paying them for access to an audience that they have created, paying for access to attention that they have created with other people, so you can promote your goods and your services. So that's essentially what advertising is. Now, there's all this talk about advertising being ineffective, and that is not the case. Advertising can be ineffective or highly effective depending on the level of thought that you put into it, the level of thought and execution. So when it comes to advertising, paid promotions, these sorts of things, whether they work or not depends on level of thought and your execution. So it's going to be effective provided that you target correctly. Because when it comes to paid promotions, you have to make sure that you are targeting the right demographic. So you're looking at the right age, the right sex, the right location, the right occupation, etc. So with the example that I gave, NTA, sports shows, and you want people to buy your sporting equipment. Now, if your shop is in Abuja, then you want to make sure that you are advertising on the NTA that only transmits in Abuja, not the NTA that transmits in Lagos or the NTA that transmits in Kwara. Because if you run the advert in Lagos or Kwara, but what you had in mind was to direct traffic to the office in Abuja, then of course your campaign is going to be unsuccessful. So that is an example of how making the right targeting the right location is essential. Now, for other businesses, you also want to be sure that you're targeting the right occupation of people or the right sex of people. So, assuming that you sell cosmetics, female cosmetics, fashion, beauty, stuff like that, my assumption is that you're going to be targeting men in particular, except if your fashion, accessories, and stuff like that are targeted towards children, then your target might be mothers exclusively, because I'm assuming that it's mothers who make the styling decisions for the children. Well, at least in my own household, anyway, it's my wife who makes the styling decision. Well, she does check with me on shoes and belts and things like that, which I would prefer for my boys, but by and large, she's the one who's calling the shots when it comes to styling decisions for the kids. So that's an example about where you want to be sure that you are targeting the right sex in your advertising. So that is what demographic targeting is. So demos is just people, and then graphos, picture. So you want to make sure that you're targeting the right picture of people, more or less. So make sure that you're targeting the right age, the right sex, the right location, the right occupation, and blah blah blah. Now, with old school advertising, that is advertising on the NTA or advertising on other channels that were available later on in the 90s. Because I think in the 90s, Lagos State now had Clapperboard, AIT, Africa Independent Television. What else? I think there was STV. I can't remember what the S stands for, but they acquired a bunch of other stations. So back in the day of AIT, Channels TV, Clapperboard, so in that heyday, this is all you had access to, demographic information. Now, the beauty about the internet is that now we have access to psychographic information, because we can now target things that people are interested in. And that's the beauty of advertising online. So if you're running advertisements on Instagram or TikTok or Google or whatever, you can target people that are interested in sports, or who are curious about sports, or who have sports as a hobby. And if the algorithm works the way that it's supposed to be, and if your campaign is run tightly, then it's only people who are interested in sports and things like that that should see your advertisements. So let's say you want to advertise on Nairaland, which is a popular website here in Nigeria. Okay, well, I don't know much about Nairaland, so I shouldn't have used that as an example. Okay, let's just skip that. We'll go to examples at the end of the recording. So, but basically for psychographic targeting, we're trying to look at the people's interests, what they're curious in, their hobbies, things like that. So the summary of what I'm trying to say is that if you do bad targeting, you are going to get bad results. If you do good targeting, then you are going to get good results. So if you have a book about the Prophet Muhammad, for instance, and you want to, you have some keen insights about Islam and things like that, it wouldn't make sense to go and advertise that in a church bulletin. You are not going to get sales. And then if you write an award-breaking book about Christ in the second millennium or something like that, you're not going to make a ton of sales. In fact, it might generate some negative interest if you were to advertise that in the bulletin of the local mosque, for instance. So in other words, the effectiveness of a campaign is going to depend on its targeting. So for good results, make sure that your targeting and your execution is on point. What else? Okay, boosting. Now, boosting is technically different from advertising, because advertising has specific messaging around it. We're trying to get people to buy from us or promote the brand. We're trying to get a specific action. But then when it comes to boosting a post, what that means is that usually you put up a post on your social media, on your Instagram or your LinkedIn or your Pinterest or your TikTok or whatever it is that you run, and the post has gotten some good engagement. That's lots of people have liked it, shared it, commented on it. Maybe you've gotten some business from it. Now, boosting the post is just paying the carrier, paying Instagram, paying Facebook, paying who else? Google. Okay, no, not Google, because you can't boost the post on Google. Twitter, because you put content on Twitter. So paying Twitter so that they boost the post, they make it visible to more people of a similar audience. So that is how boosting is similar to advertising, and that is why, technically speaking, even though advertising and boosting are different, I'm going to lump them together and speak about them in one breath. So for boosting, you're paying for more of a particular audience to see the post, and of course, it also depends heavily on your targeting. You want to make sure that your demographic targeting is on point and your psychographic targeting is on point. So now, an example to wrap things up quickly. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I started off in the wedding and the event space, and so this is how typically we used to do it back in the day. I'm assuming that things still run pretty much the same way now. So if you're in the wedding event business, you're a photographer, you're a wedding planner, then okay, let's see, Instagram. Okay, yeah, so my generation was mostly Instagram. I know that people, wedding and event planners, event professionals are also on TikTok, Snapchat, and all these other mediums, but I haven't toyed with those apps in this space, so I can't give those examples. So let me stick to the now old school example of Instagram, because I hear that TikTok advertising is all the rage. So anyway, let me stick to the old school example of Instagram. So with Instagram, back then, let's say 5 years ago, you'd want to advertise on Instagram, or you'd want to boost a post, and you would go into your ad manager. I think it was ad manager, either your ad manager or your account manager. It's something that you can access easily from your profile, either on Facebook on the desktop, or your profile on Instagram. So either ad manager or Facebook manager, or something like that. Anyway, it was easy to access. I can't remember the exact links, and then you'll be able to tweak your parameters, and then you'll be able to say that I am looking for women based in Abuja. Okay, yes, let's use Abuja because in this case I'm based in Abuja. So looking for women aged between 18 to 25, or let's say 18 to 30. Okay, so this for the event space, 18. No, 18 is too young. Okay, let's say 22. Let's say women start getting married from 22. So I'm looking for women between the ages of 22 to 35 in Abuja. You could even specify the parts of town. So you set in your ad parameters that you're interested in people who are in Garki, Gwarimpa, where else? Central Business District, Wuse, things of that nature. I'm assuming that if you lived within town, you don't want to capture people on the extreme parts of town like Kubwa, like Gwagwalada, Maraba. So you leave those places out. Also, there's the assumption that people that live on the extreme parts of town, in satellite towns, are not, what's the word? Is it upwardly socially mobile? I can't remember the term, but anyway, I'm sure you catch my drift. You're trying to look for people with bigger purses, with fatter purses. So that would be the idea of cutting out certain locations in your advertising. And then you would also get to pick out the interests. My guess is that you'll be selecting women. Okay, we've determined the age, we've determined the location. So for interest would now be people who are interested in wedding dresses, wedding event venues, or wedding cakes, or things like that. So you would select all of that, and then it would show you the amount that is. Sorry, one moment. Okay, I set an alarm on my phone and it just ran. What was I? Okay, yeah, so you would do all of that. It would show you how much it is that you would have to pay, and then you would click to run the campaign for a certain number of days, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, whatever. You can pick custom parameters. And then at the end of the day, you will see how much business did I get out of it, what was successful, what was not. You look at the results, and then you reiterate that maybe it's possible that the age range was too wide, or maybe the locations you picked were not specific enough. But basically, that's what advertising and boosting is all about. It's about targeting, taking feedback, and then targeting again. Now, how this helps you find customers or create customers is if you do a good job, then people who are looking for your services within that locale will reach out and give you a call. And just like I mentioned in the previous podcast recordings, you want to be sure that you have an effective sales process and effective sales framework, because it's not going to do you any good if you run this campaign on Instagram and then you have, let's say you have 30 people call you up during the week, and of the 30 people that call you, you only end up doing business with one person. It shows that your process is inefficient and you're leaving money on the table. So you want to make sure that you have an effective sales process, an effective sales system. How do you do that? We're not going to get into that in this episode because I've already addressed that in prior episodes. So once you're done listening to this, if this is your first time of listening to the show, just look for old episodes that have sales framework in the title or sales process in the title, and you'll get some more details there. And probably we'll make some more episodes about that in the future with specific case studies just to flesh things out. So so that's it. That's all to episode 570 on how we can use online advertising and boosting to help find our customers. I can't remember what else is next. I will check my list, and at the next episode, at episode 571 tomorrow, we will continue and possibly wrap up this discussion on lead generation, or the art of finding customers, or the art of creating customers. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.